Hi there, and welcome back to Ride Free, Be Safe, but Don't Tread on Me, Part 2. We're about to head back to Penn State Forest, but first, let's take a trip back in time. The area was occupied by a branch of the Lenape tribe of Native Americans when the first European settlers arrived in the early 19th century. These settlers constructed a very small village called Penn Place in what is now Penn State Forest. It was located on the east branch of the Wading River. It was a tiny village that got its name from a descendant of the Penn family that supposedly resided here in the 18th century. However, it appears that the first Penn in the area, James Penn, was the son of a William Penn who was a sea captain, not the William Penn. James Penn arrived in the area by the beginning of the 19th century, bringing his grown sons and their families. Penn and one of his sons, Thomas, reportedly operated a sawmill in what is now Indian Mills, New Jersey. James Penn died in 1814, but the Penn family may have resided in the area up until about 1890. Around that time, Edwin Pugh and his wife acquired the property. The Pughs eventually contracted with the state of New Jersey for the sale of the land in what was known as the Penn Reserve on 26 October 1909. This was one of the first acquisitions made by New Jersey for its new park system. It's hard to know exactly when you enter the Pine Barrens. There's no clear border. Instead, it's a slow immersion, suburbs and exurbs giving way to rural spaces, and those in turn transforming into something more primal. But in the peak of the 1960s jet age, the pines were very nearly paved over to make way for an airport designed for supersonic jetliners, along with a city that, had it been built, would now be the third largest in the state. Burlington County officials began to push for a large airport to service only jets. Officials were doing their best to build a jet airport that would serve New York, Philadelphia, and most of the northern seaboard. It was planned to be 4 times larger than Newark, LaGuardia, and JFK combined. The region in which the airport would have been located is one of the most undeveloped and primitive in New Jersey. The projected air facility would rise in the sandy scrub that extends northward from Penn State Forest to Vincetown, bounded on the east by Lebanon State Forest, and on the west by the mammoth 100,000-acre Wharton Tract. Lake Oswego was to be filled in and turned into an airplane runway as part of the supersonic Jetport proposal. However, the area started to be touted for its natural beauty, and people were encouraged to explore this wilderness that managed to exist between New York City and Philadelphia. In 1960, readers of the New York Times were encouraged to drive to Penn State Forest Observation Tower on Bear Swamp Hill for a superb view of the South Jersey wilderness. The public started to become aware of the unique environment of the Pine Barrens in the early 1970s through educational tours which were becoming available, like the 7.5-hour canoe trip through the Pine Barrens that began at Lake Oswego. The push to build a jetport in the Pine Barrens continued into the next 2 decades, but it created an effective and growing opposition that resulted in the Pine Barrens being protected on the state and federal level in 1978 when Congress established the Pinelands as one of the first national reserves. Warning: this may be difficult to watch for sensitive Jeepers. I know it is for me.
I think it's better with it down. So it's not scratching the windows so bad. Cody's stuck in the middle. She's so scared to go to the outside.
Yeah, go ahead. Put your face out, dog.
She might.
It clears up.
She might be too scared to put her face out now.
Turn that.
You're gonna need to get it like 17 layers of wrap so that it stops getting scratched in the paint.
Yeah, we're not going to do this again, that's for sure. If we come up to stuff like this, make sure to remind me.
Turn around.
Yep. Turn around.
It looks like it ends.
I see.
like maybe easier stuff?
Maybe. This is just getting worse and worse. Yeah, we can't make it through here.
The only way you can turn around is right up back here.
It's gonna suck. Ouch. That hurts every time I watch it. So that's how the Jeep gets its piney stripes. The scratches from the pine branches sticking out into the trail. There's been a couple times we hit a trail thin like that, seemed to turn into an ATV track. First time, we made it through, wasn't too bad. This time, that was just crazy. And we're about 1.5 miles from the main road where we want to get to from there too. But that's how it sometimes goes. Showing you the good and the bad. The U.S. Geological Survey was created by an act of Congress in 1879. It was charged with the classification of the public lands and examination of the geological structure, mineral resources, and products of the national domain. Water level measurements from observation wells like this are the principal source of information about the hydrologic stresses acting on aquifers and how these stresses affect groundwater recharge, storage, and discharge. The goal of these monitoring stations is to obtain the groundwater data needed for operating, administrating, managing, researching, and planning water resources programs. I love being able to stop just anywhere randomly on the trail and get out and enjoy nature. The bright blue sky, the rippling of the creek, the wind through the treetops. It just doesn't get any better. It's pretty. Yep, there you go.
It's okay.
Sure is. Yep, it is.
That's how I knew that place from.
Mm-hmm.
That was what happened when I said
Yep.
what happened to the wire?
Got pulled out. Yep. Well, Logan's eagle eye was able to spot this from the road, these ruins. Little occurred at Penn State Forest until the Great Depression. On July 6, 1933, the train station in Tuckerton received some new visitors as the first enlistees of the first Civilian Conservation Corps. The CCC was created by a law Congress passed in 1933 which created a public jobs program in the New Deal. The idea of the CCC was to take unemployed young men, usually between ages 17 and 23, move them to U.S. Army administrated camps in wilderness areas, and pay them $1 a day for labor. For this $30 a month, the men would aid foresters in state and national parks and forests around America. Of the $30 a month they made, $25 would be sent home to their families to help them survive the Great Depression. $5 would be left for the men for spending money. The camp located at Penn State Forest was for African American enlistees only, as this was a time of legal segregation of the races. They were responsible for the creation of bridges, cabins, picnic shelters, roads, and even a lake, Oswego, by building a dam on the Oswego River. Between 1933 and 1942, when it disbanded soon after the United States entered World War II, about 3 million men found employment in the Corps, which had 4,000 camps across all 48 states and in the Hawaii and Alaska territories. Goldie, go for a ride? Go for a ride? Go for a ride? Yeah. Watch it be super deep when you get stuck right here.
It's a street.
Yeah, no. Still, I want to get out and get in a puddle.
It looks like a barn. It's like a barn
Yeah.
with boats. Oh wait, never mind. That's not a boat.
And that is not really a fence.
And that is creepy.
Yep.
That isn't a very safe house.
It is.
Are you gonna drive down?
Drive right into the lake.
I mean, some people do have cars that go to car to boat.
Yeah.
Like that president, I forgot which one.
This whole thing will be blocked off. They don't want anybody here, I guess. The western edge of Lake Oswego, where it butts up against Cranberry Farm. Enjoyed riding along on our trip through Penn State Forest, and I hope that you'll join us next time. Until then, make it an adventure.